But interestingly as well, this evening, what's come out is that the king very much hopes to go and visit some of the areas affected. But it's been made quite clear to me by people within Buckingham Palace that he will only do so if a royal visit wouldn't detract police officers from frontline duties where they're needed elsewhere. So that's another concern that the king has.
First, as ever, the front page of the Times, and the headline goes with the King's statement, saying that he's hailing the response to the riots, praising community spirit that countered aggression after he's had talks with the Prime Minister and police chiefs. So let's talk about that. Let's start off with that now, because the story's been written up for the front page of the Times by Kate Mansey, the assistant editor and royal correspondent. Kate, hello and good evening to you.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you.
No, it's great to have you, especially with the king having spoken, and I would say finally spoken, because he's been becoming under a bit of pressure, hasn't he, from some both on the left and the right to say something.
That's right. People have been urging the king this week to say something about the riots that have unfolded since the tragic attack that happened in Southport on the 29th of July. And the palace reaction behind the scenes has been that, well, when these riots happened in 2011, there were around 4,000 arrests at that point. The late Queen didn't say anything. And if the king did make an intervention, it would only be on the advice of government. But what we've seen tonight is a new development in the story from the palace perspective anyway, in that the Buckingham Palace spokesman has said that the king has made a phone call. He made a phone call to Prime Minister Keir Starmer at 6:30 this evening for about 15 minutes from his Scottish home in Birkhall on the Balmoral estate. Following that, he had a joint call with two leading police chiefs. Now, they were Chief Constable Gavin Stevens, who's chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, and Ben Harrington, who's Chief Constable of Essex and also has the role of UK Gold Commander. But it's what he said, we're told what he said during that call that's really interesting. He offered his heartfelt thanks to the emergency services and the police for the work that they've been doing. But also he said that he was greatly encouraged by the many examples of community spirit that had countered the aggression and criminality from a few. So this underlying this idea that the many are the good and it's these actions of just a few people. And he called for kind of unity and thanked the police for restoring peace in those areas that have been affected by violent disorder. Mm-hmm. So this might go some way to detracting from some of the criticism the palace has received this week in the silence that's been coming from there.
Yeah. Do we know why the king took his time? Was it because he was taking soundings? Was it because he felt that this is something my mother didn't do, but I must? Not least because I'm the founder of the Prince's, now King's Trust. I've always celebrated a multicultural, diverse Britain. I've always celebrated the Commonwealth. And so I've got to get this right.
Yeah, Henry, you make some excellent points, because we do know Charles for being quite outspoken on these issues of community. Just a few last year, in fact, he talked about Britain being a community of communities. And he's very much into this idea of interfaith dialogue, so bringing different people from different faiths and of none together to share that kind of common values, the bonds that bind us. As Prince of Wales, we know him to be very outspoken. So I think he's been quite frustrated this week. As monarch, he has a different role. He really does have to consult government before he makes any intervention. The last thing they want to do is make anything worse. But interestingly as well, this evening, what's come out is that the king very much hopes to go and visit some of the areas affected. But it's been made quite clear to me by people within Buckingham Palace that he will only do so if a royal visit wouldn't detract police officers from frontline duties where they're needed elsewhere. So that's another concern that the king has. But it's an interesting development. And like you say, it is quite different from his mother. We know him to be more outspoken than his mother was. And he's doing that within the kind of structure of being monarch. So it's quite interesting to see how he's using that kind of the protocol, taking precedent from his mother, but also making it his own.
Interesting balancing act there, Kate. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio. That's the Times royal correspondent and assistant editor, and her stories on the front page of Saturday's Times and on the inside as well. It's Henry Bonsu on Times Radio.
background, they're going a bit black. That was Clint there. Are you guys getting enough? Are you happy? Yeah. You take one of the cups. Sarah, do you want to come up here and sit? Too close keeps the veggies off, but it also gets a bit hot. Yeah.
And is it all, is it venison burgers?
Venison burgers with cold venison shoulder. That's from our Dowdy Castle Gardens, kale. That's slowly cooked down. And we've got our team here: Fiona Murray, Deborah McDonald, Phoebe Nicholson, Keir Murray, and over there we've got some cheese dressing from Ardis here, Canada.
Everybody can put them in the box.
Yes, we've got it in the box. And some venison jam. Yes, of course. We've got some cucumber from Aldowley Castle Garden, just pickled last week, and some black currant ketchup. So, and here is, we shot this. That is from the Royal Estate, a nice flat style. Sorry, this is our gamekeeper, Hugh. Take that home and enjoy that little point.
I'm sure it's good.
Very good for you.
I'm really good at with rock climbing.
Yes. I take you around to the fish. I think